What is up, everyone, and welcome to The Shell Part 2 Purgatorio, also known simply as Kara no Shoujo 2. Obviously, the sequel to Kara no Shoujo, or The Shell. Very excited for this one. Already off rip, just opening the game up. I love this main menu music. I don't even know the emotional weight behind it yet, 'cause I'm sure there's gonna be some, right? I'm sure, like, after I finish this game, I'm gonna come back to the main menu and just be like, oh, fuck, dude. But for right now, just this music alone, I'm already like, ooh. Just the main menu music, they're already cooking, and I love it. But yes, I am very excited to jump into this one, especially after finishing Cartagra. I liked the first Shell game. It was good, really solid. But genuinely, I loved Cartagra. That one was great. For me personally, I like that one a bit better. I thought it was really good. And knowing that there's going to be references and callbacks from that game in this one, very excited for. The little bit I know about this game comes strictly from the synopsis, in the fact that at some point, the Senri cult from Cartagra gets revived in this story, and misfortune follows, but this time instead of Shugo going up against Senri, it's going to be our boy Reiji, so very excited to see where that goes. The one thing that I'm just very curious of, I don't know if it gets addressed in this game, maybe in the third game, maybe it doesn't get addressed at all, but the one thing very curious of after reading Cartagra is I want to know what happens to Yura. I want to know what Yura's fate is. I want to know how she plays into Reiji's story, right? I'm very curious about that. Because, you know, after playing the Shell Part 1, I had no idea that Kazna had a twin sister. Or maybe they did mention it at some point and I just totally blanked it. But even then, it was rarely ever mentioned. But then when you play Cartagra, it's this major plot point, especially at the end of, like, you know, at the end, they're like, oh yeah, one day we'll be a big happy family together and then we'll go see my sister when she wakes up, right? But then, you know, she's never, like, really mentioned at all in Kara no Shoujo, which was obviously the follow-up to Cartagra. So I'm very curious because this game is going to take more from Shugo's story than the first Kara no Shoujo did. So I'm curious to see what role, if any, Yura plays in this story. Because I figure if this one's going to be pulling more from Shugo's story, there's a higher chance we'll at least have her mentioned or get some tidbits about what happened to her. And if not, maybe there's a big grand reveal in the third game that I'm gonna have to wait for. Regardless, like I've been saying, very excited for this one. Also, my friend that, you know, originally introduced me to this series, he's hyped up this one for a while. This game in particular is not only just his favorite in this franchise thus far, he hasn't had the chance to read the third one as it's never been localized yet. But this one so far is not only his favorite in this franchise, but it's one of, like, his all-time favorite visual novels. He puts it up there in, like, his top 5, maybe even top 3. He genuinely loves this one, so that alone is also really building up my hype for what this game has in store. But enough yapping, let's get into it, shall we? The penitent sinner wandered in pursuit of a lone star. Okay. Also, you know, with the first game, obviously, but when his travels brought him no closer to the path to heaven, he inquired to the star of its whereabouts, which the star answered. I'll let this finish and then I'll say what I had to say. Those fettered to the earth by human rationale shall never rise into heaven. The Excommunicate. November 10th, 1957. Oh yeah, I don't know specifically what the time gap is between the two games. Obviously, there is a bit of time that passes. I don't know how much though. It says it's telling me 1957, but hell if I know what the year was at the end of Kara no Shoujo. I genuinely don't. But and what I was saying was I managed to catch some references in to the Divine Comedy in the Shell Part 1 because that one was based a lot off, Inferno, obviously. However, that's the only one I've read, so I don't know what references they may make to the other two parts of the Divine Comedy with these next two games, but I'm just not I'm gonna catch any of those because I never had the chance to read them. I just wanted to point that out. But anyway, November 1957. Yukiko Kayahara had been staring a hole into her wall for what had felt like hours on end. At the end of her line of sight hung a fresh uniform for one Oba Girls Academy. Tomorrow, she would don those garments for the very first time and start life at her brand new school. Up until just recently, Yukiko had been attending another school altogether. However, she suddenly transferred out, and for good reason, too. Oh, yeah? Oh! A rather brutal tragedy had taken the school by storm not too long ago. Then, bro, you don't want to be going to Oba Girls Academy. I don't know what went down in your school, but, believe me, Oba Girls Academy ain't tragedy-free, my guy. To be more specific, one of their students had fallen to her death off of a train overpass. Yikes. While most normally would have chalked it up as an unfortunate but ultimately mundane accident, the problem was that Yukiko had strong ties to the incident. Okay. Rumors had started flying around after the girl's funeral that Yukiko was to blame for her death. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good reason to move. All because the two of them had simply happened to be together that day. But while the rumors held no water, there was nothing Yukiko could do than suffer their slings and arrows once they'd spread like wildfire. Those words escaped Yukiko's lips. She wanted to say them loud and proud to everyone. But that assertion had always died before it was ever so much as quiver in her throat. And that was why she'd left that school without standing up for herself even once. In the aftermath, Yukiko had considered job hunting. However, while an idea nobly fueled by the knowledge she and her mother weren't particularly well off, the latter had been against that prospect. She said she wanted Yukiko to get the proper education fate's whims had denied her. Thus, she suggested her daughter transfer to Oba Girls Academy instead. After all, not only was it close to home, but Yukiko wouldn't have to get anywhere near a train that way. Though Yukiko couldn't deny the adorable white uniform was also a plus. Suddenly, she was snapped out of her trance by the thud of a knock.
Yukiko, 入るわよ.
Okay, I think I need to turn these voices down a bit. They're a bit loud in my headphones. God damn, those sound effects are a bit loud too. Shit. The door opened a moment later.
母さん.
Huyumi, Yukiko's mother, stepped in.
あら、制服見てたの?
God damn, everything's loud. The music seemed fine, so I didn't really bother to check any of the other settings, but holy shit. Man, mom's loud, fucking the door opening's loud. Let's turn you down a couple bars. Let's turn those sound effects down a couple bars, eh? Yukiko hung her head, a flush of embarrassment washing over her.
丈は合わせたでしょ? ぴったりのはずよ。それは分かってる。あんた、また育ったんじゃないわよね。
Hey, you didn't go getting bigger again, did you? I love that face too. That's such a good face. Devious side eye. I love it. Yukiko unconsciously covered her chest, knowing exactly where her mother's eyes were aimed.
私と同じもの食べてるのに、むしろユキコの方が偏食であまり食べてないのに、どうしてこんなに差がつくのかしら。それは血がつながって。
Oh. Okay, well. Wow, things went from goofy to sad real fucking quick. Indeed. Huyumi was actually Yukiko's foster mother. She'd adopted her after the orphanage where Yukiko was raised had closed down. Well, it had been quite some time since then. A part of Yukiko still didn't feel like the two of them were truly mother and daughter.
血がつながっていたら、私もこのくらいにはなってたのかしらね。
Quite the opposite, actually. Not that Yukiko could ever say that out loud. I don't know. Fuyumi seems like a very nice woman. Yeah, I mean, she's a bit goofy. She likes to have fun, but she seems nice.
何か用があったの？
Fuyumi tapped her fingers in contemplation.
ユキコが不安がっているんじゃないかな。私が？
Yukiko was a bit surprised.
違った？わからない。
Yukiko shook her head. She'd be lying if she said she wasn't, but neither was she particularly inclined to discuss things with her mother.
そっか。
Fuyumi nodded.
あんたのことだから、また余計な心配事抱えてるんじゃないかと思ったのよ。そんな。
No, maybe she's right.
また友達ができないんじゃないかとか悩んでいるんじゃないでしょうね。
Are you gonna be Yukari's new friend? Yukiko had no retort for that. Her mother never failed to read her like an open book, much to her constant surprise. Perhaps it was because they'd known each other for a while, even before they'd become family.
いいユキコ。
Fuyumi cupped Yukiko's cheeks in her hand.
友達なんてのはね、きちんと挨拶してお話ししていれば自然とできるものなの。
Mie was Yukiko's recently deceased friend.
あまり覚えてない。
Yukiko shook her head. Come to think of it, how did we become friends again? Mie hadn't exactly been a social butterfly. Quite the contrary. She'd whittled away her breaks reading books in the corner of her classroom. So then, who initiated first contact? Me or Mie? Unfortunately, Yukiko's mind was fuzzy on the details. Well, I imagine so. I imagine thinking of your recently deceased friend makes you think of the recently deceased and not of how you became friends. I'm scared. I'm scared of how it feels, like I'm going to forget all about her.
よし。
Fuyumi nodded to herself and rose to her feet.
ご飯にしよう。
That mundane response left Yukiko sheepish, forever thinking her mother had been hinting at anything more.
難しいことは考えててもダメ。当たって砕けろくらいの勢いじゃないと。
I'd rather no one break anything. But in all seriousness,
少しは自分から動かないと。
if she'd made friends before, she could do it again. She had to. I wish you the best of luck, girl. Okay. Those strings kind of took me by surprise in the track there. They came in with the piano. I was like, oh, okay. And then the strings came in. Kind of like, ooh, all right. November 1957. Oba Girls Academy, a bastion of learning in Musashino since the era of westernization, educating ladies from respectable families. And also the Tokisakas. Speaking of, Yukari Tokisaka, one of its students, briefly stopped in her tracks at the school gates. She'd been taking the same route there for years now. Once, the trip had been lively with the company of her friends, but nowadays, yeah. You're gonna make me feel bad and fucking make me remember that my homie's dead. Yukari adjusted the lapels of her coat. Or lapel, I think is how it's pronounced, whatever. Not only had the snow arrived earlier this year, but the wind had chilled as well. Perhaps it's about time I get Reiji's overcoat out of the closet for him. But then, something occurred to her. Normally, she sent said overcoat to the cleaners after checking it for smudges and frays once he had handed it over to her in the spring. However, she had no recollection of performing such an act within the past year, much less putting said coat away. But I thought I'd talk to Reiji about that. It was then she finally remembered. When they discussed the matter at home, her brother had informed her that he'd left the coat at his agency, and that was the last time it had come up. Unfortunately, that meant the coat had just been sitting forgotten at his office in Shinjuku for over half a year. She'd even gone to clean the place more times than she could begin to count, yet it totally slipped her mind.
どうしようかしら。何がかしら。
Yukari's brooding was interrupted by an ambush in the form of a familiar voice.
小羽。
What's Kohane? Ah! The derailer of her train of thought was none other than Kohane Tori, her classmate. Don't you think you can come in here, be all bright and energetic and shit, try to think you can fucking replace my homie. Don't you dare think you can be that person. You stop that right now. She was one of Yukari's new friends and a relative greenhorn at their school.
何か悩んでいるようだったけど、どうしたの？
I don't like you. I don't like you. You're acting too cheerful. You're acting too bright and cheerful. You're not bringing the same energy that my homie did, but you're trying to bring that energy. I don't like it. You're trying to be a replacement. I don't like that. I don't like you. I don't like you, Kohane. I don't trust you.
ええ、コートがカツオブシムシの餌になっているかもしれなくて。カツオ節を餌にする虫？違うのよ。カツオブシムシの幼虫が兄のコートを食べているかもしれないから。よくわからないわよ。
Kahara. Oh, Kahara must be her first name. Cocked her head.
伊賀の幼虫も
surname.
卵が産みつけられていると大変なのよ。伊賀忍者は卵を産むの？え？え？
The pair stared at each other quizzically.
話が噛み合っていないみたいね。
I mean, to be fair, like, no one's ever on Yukari's page. Not that this was anything new for both of them, of course.
それでね、ゆかりっち、今日って何の日か覚えてる？
Don't you call her Kari? Nor was Kahane's habit of changing the subject on a dime.
今日？
They sale at the greengrocer's tomorrow, so I'll be cleaning the agency in Shinjuku this weekend. No, wait, maybe I'll do that today instead. The sooner I check on that coat, the better.
ゆかりっち？あ、ごめんなさい。何があるの？先週先生が言ってたじゃない。転入生が来るって。転入生？ああ。
That was all coming back. She did recall finding it strange that they'd been getting a new classmate so late in the year. Not that it was illegal or anything, but it was certainly unconventional.
寒いから中に入りましょう。
I don't even like your hairstyle. I see what you're going for, and it's just not working. Kahane raced right into the school grounds, sparing not so much as a thought for a friend lost in rumination. Typical Kahane, always marching to the beat of her own drum. Yeah, it reminds me of someone. Yukari simply smiled wearily and chased after Kohane like a harried mother. Before long, the pair reached their classroom. Yukari set her bag down on the desk in the back, only to notice a new desk right behind her. That must be for the transfer student. Yukari had to admit she felt a bit nervous. She wasn't exactly the life of the party, so she tended to be awkward around new people. What do I say to her? Should I ask where she's from, perhaps? Yukari took her seat as those concerns flittered about her mind. Class was actually noisy for a change. Clearly the prospect of a new schoolmate had them all abuzz with speculation and anticipation.
あ、ゆかりっちの後ろになるのね。
Kahane trotted over to Yukari.
そうみたい。どんな子かしら。面白い子だといいな。
Oh yeah, she just has trauma from her friend dying. Hey, maybe you can bond with Yukari over that.
面白い？どんな？何か影を背負っているとか、異世界と交信してる感じとか。それは面白いとは言わないと思うけど。
Kahane was a major bookworm, especially when it came to fantasy and sci-fi. Hence why she frequently said all kinds of wacky stuff. Oh, she's so silly and wacky and quirky. You can never be her. Yukari couldn't help but be reminded of her old friend whenever she spoke. Yeah, I need you to stop reminding me of her, because you're pissing me off that you think you can be that replacement.
あ、先生来たみたい。
I also, we're gonna have new teachers, right? Because, you know, the one teacher was kind of a serial killer, right? So... And then also the nurse was involved in that issue, so she's not gonna be here anymore. She did. A moment later, their teacher opened the door and marched right in. She'd come alone. The rest of the class couldn't disguise their disappointment.
起立。
Under the direction of the class representative, the students went through the standard morning procedure.
本日は以前にお伝えした通り、皆さんと共に学ぶことになる転入生がやってきます。
No sooner had she said that than was the class. Yeah, then the class was astir with excited whispers. All eyes trained on the door. That went for Yukari's too, naturally.
どうぞ、茅原さん。
The door slowly opened at the teacher's bidding. The class fell silent again. Everyone was watching with bated breath. Connie's gasp was awfully loud. Okay. Long ponytail, purple bow. I like it. Standing in the doorway. was a girl with a long ponytail, clad in the pastel white uniform of Oba Girls Academy. A quiet hullabaloo danced through the classroom. Holy God. Jeez. Stop. Your name is not that long. There's no fucking way in hell your name's that long. Oh my God. Hey, holy shit. Yeah, no, sound effects, we need to drop you down a bit lower. Holy shit. Holy Christ. My ears just got fucking assaulted. Oh. You know, most people don't like the sounds of chalkboards, and like normally it doesn't bother me, but when it's cranked up to 11 in directly to my fucking ears, holy shit. Alright, the transfer student picked up a piece of chalk and wrote her name on the blackboard. She also wrote out a few more sentences just so they could really milk those fucking sound effects. Oh, yeah, you look really familiar to someone else. Holy shit. What? Ayo? What is a big plot twist gonna be? Also, Toko had a twin sister. Like, excuse me? Ma'am? And with that, she gave a little bow. Yukiko trudged through the maze of desks. Eventually, she passed right by Yukari. Yukari gave her a genial nod, but Yukiko plodded by like she hadn't even noticed. She's probably all nerves at the moment. Once Yukiko was at her desk, Yukari turned around and stole a glance. Yukiko was hanging her head, not so much as twitching. She didn't seem to be daunted by all the stares she was getting. Though perhaps that was all on the outside, of course. The homeroom teacher left the classroom once the students had finished that little ritual. And yet, the hounding of the new student by the rest of the class, witnessed so commonly across the rest of the world, was nowhere to be found. Everyone was curious about Yukiko, but they still adhered to the school's rules. However, since she was literally right in front of her, Yukari attempted to turn around, only for Kohane to suddenly march over and seize her arm. Kohane dragged Yukari to the blackboard. Really? Wow. It truly was a small world. That certainly explained why Kohane had gasped when she first saw Yukiko. You're getting the willies? Who the fuck says they're getting the willies? Excuse you? Now I'm getting the willies. Like, ayo? Ayo, ease up? Maybe find some different terminology, please? Kalani scratched her cheek. Oh, it totally is. Fuck off. I mean, no, of course not. The pair returned to Yukari's desk. Her classmates watched their actions closely from afar. Kalani ultimately took the first step. Yukiko awkwardly looked away. She just shook her head. Kohane chuckled. However, Yukari couldn't help but think that laugh sounded rather forced. Well, yeah, of course it's gonna sound forced. You essentially walk up to someone like, hey, remember me? No, I'm this person. Who? And you're like, oh, haha, yeah, haha, Kohane nodded reassuringly. Oh, whoops. Yukari mustered a smile as she introduced herself. Yukiko reciprocated with a tiny nod. Suddenly, the bell rang. Kohane fled back to her desk. Yukari also took her seat. Meanwhile, Yukiko was frozen like a statue behind her. Almost as though... Oh, behind Yukari, okay. As though their conversation had never even happened. Did she really not know Kohane? Or was she simply pretending not to? I don't know. I wish I could pretend not to know Kohane at this point. It was times like these that Yukari really wished she had her brother's detective brain. Despite this being a new school, classes were conducted much the same way as they were at Yukiko's previous one. Fortunately, they used the same textbooks, too. Thanks to that, she caught up in no time. This school was ahead of her old one when it came to certain subjects, though, so there were a few things she'd missed. Luckily, a little bit of studying in her spare time would likely close that gap easily. The bell rang, indicating the end of classes. Yukiko heaved a profound sigh. Her classmates filed out of the room in small groups. In the end, she'd barely said a word to any of them. Some had tried talking to her, but Yukiko found herself freezing up entirely. Truth be told, she did remember Kohane, the girl who had approached her that morning. Yet Yukiko had lied about that. Her memories of the past were hazy, so she didn't want to put the two of them in the awkward position of Kohane bringing up shared stories that Yukiko herself didn't recall. So instead, you put yourself in the awkward position of saying you didn't know them entirely. Okay, way to go, dude. She was of the opinion that it was better to feign ignorance than to disappoint others. However, her mother had told her she had needed to take a leap of faith. Also, feign ignorance instead of disappoint others. You don't think you disappointed Kohane at all by saying you don't remember her? Unfortunately, she got in cold feet before she could take that jump. What do I do? I guess I'll just head home. There was nothing more she could do here, after all. It was with that thought in mind that she picked up her bag and rose to her feet. However, the girl who sat in front of her struck up a conversation just as Yukiko was about to depart. She introduced herself as Yukari Takasaka, if Yukiko recalled. Even Yukiko realized that choice of words came off far harsher than intended. But they would come naturally to her. See, Yukiko, this is why you don't have any friends. Yukiko forgot to even blink. She couldn't comprehend the question. Or rather, she didn't understand what this girl was hoping to gain from asking it. Yukiko shook her head. She was lying. God damn it, Yukiko, you suck. But if she admitted she liked art, that'd be more conversation, a notion that chilled her insides over. Okay, I get that, but also, Jesus. You can, cut a conversation short and still be like honest, right? I get you're like, yeah, I don't like small talk, but you can still be like honest. Like you can give like short, curt responses that don't really, initiate much of a conversation. Jesus, fucking constantly lying. Like what's next? Someone's gonna be like, oh, you're Yukiko, right? No, I'm not. Never been. It's like, I lied. My name is Yukiko, but I didn't want them to know that. That means they might continue talking to me. Like, this girl's already a pain in the ass. They've introduced 2 new characters and already they're pains in my asses. I still like Yukari though. And with that final exchange, Yukiko scurried past Yukari and escaped the classroom. She wanted to get away as soon as possible. I'm too much of a coward to make that leap of faith to make friends myself. Hi, I'd like to be your friend. No. Like, god damn. Yukari dropped by the art room she'd been frequenting for years now. Only now it's a lot more empty. Because there's no Toko 1, there's no Toko 2. Your best friend isn't gonna stop by and hang out. Honestly, who's left? Yeah, because then there was also Nishizono, who was part of it, but she died early on in the first game. Yeah, honestly, it's just you at this point, isn't it? Unless, there's some new students this year. Yukari loved these scents. Might have to turn that music down just a little bit. Though naturally, she also loved the aroma of coffee at her family friend's cafe, as well as the fragrance of leaf mold in her room. Yukari took a nearby seat. Oh, did Kohane join the club? Kohane was sitting around, acting like she owned the place. Or once again, are you just trying to fill in my homie's spot by just being the friend that's not part of the club but always hangs around? Asshole.
どうして私よりも先に来ているのかしら？
ゆかりっちが来ると分かってたもの。それに私だって一応部員なのよ。ゆかり
I'm
っちが
guessing
誘っ
she
てき
made
たんじゃ
her
ない。
join so that the art club wouldn't be disbanded or dissolved.
ああ、
It all began when Yukari pleaded with Kahane to join the club since it was on the verge of abolishment due to its lack of membership. Yeah. Though Yukari had asked several friends, Kahane was the only one who'd answered the call of duty. That said, all she ever did was laze around. She never drew anything, as far as Yukari knew anyway. Instead, Kahane simply read books or shot the breeze with Yukari. Still, Yukari was grateful for her presence all the same.
ゆきこちゃんとお話しした？
Attempted. Kahane suddenly changed the subject.
ええ、少しだけ。
どうだった？
どうと言われても。
Yukari furrowed her brow. Not because she was uncomfortable, but rather bewildered. Her chat with Yukiko hadn't exactly gone well, after all. It almost felt like the girl hated the very notion of talking. Well, you're not wrong.
友達になりたいとは思うけれど。
Unfortunately, Yukari had no idea how to break that ice.
やっぱり私が行かないとダメかしらね。
Yep, we'll definitely need your help, Kahane. That certainly was one tactic. However,
でも
Kahane had looked hurt back when Yukiko claimed she didn't remember her.
やっぱり他人の空似なのでは？ユキコという名前だってよくあるから。
Indeed, it was a rather popular one. Even the woman who'd almost been Yukari's sister-in-law shared that name. Was that Reiji's fiance's name? Huh. I mean, I guess, like, fuck do I know? Just like, I don't remember it being that, but also I don't remember it, so I guess so.
さっきはそう言ったけど、でもやっぱり本人に間違いないのよ。
Kahane nodded as if she was trying to convince herself of that just as much as Yukari.
小さい頃の話だから、私も曖昧にしか覚えていない部分もあるけど。
そうね。
The older the memory, the more it faded. That didn't mean it was completely gone. Yukari herself didn't want to forget anyone she'd ever met, since even her most painful memories were still a part of her. That said, if she were ever reminded of things, she'd rather remain under lock and key.
茅原さんってどんな人だったの？
あ、昔同じ保育所にいたの。あの頃とは雰囲気が変わってるような気がするけれど、不思議と存在感があるのは変わってないわ。
Yukari did indeed know someone like that. A former member of the art club who'd vanished last spring. She and Yukiko both shared a similar aura. Yeah, I think it's more than just their aura, honestly. I think they also share very similar physical appearances. No, watch, it's gonna be like Yukari somehow manages, to break through Yukiko's tough exterior, right? And then invites her back to her place where Reiji's there, and then Reiji sees her, he's like, good God, could it be? Perhaps that was why Yukari had been keen on inviting her to the club. However, they didn't make them the same person. So ultimately what mattered most was what Yukiko herself wanted.
それでね、保育所がなくなっちゃってからは。
じゃあ本当に久しぶりの再会なのね。
そうね。もともとゆきこちゃんは忘れっぽい子だったから。
きっと思い出すから大丈夫よ。
There's no guarantee of that, of course, but Yukari wanted to reassure Kahane. After all, the thought of being forgotten must have been tearing her apart. Suddenly the door opened, revealing a short-haired girl who was a few grades younger.
こんにちは、先輩方。
Ayumu? Is that you?
あら、佐藤さん。
Yeah, Ayumu Sato? None other than Ayumu Sato, yep.
今日も剣道部？
ええ、この時期になると道場の床が冷たくて。
剣道は素足だものね。
靴下くらい履けばいいのにね。
それだと滑りますから。
Ayumu picked up a bag stashed in the corner of the room that contained all her protective gear.
いつも置かせてもらってすみません。
構わないのよ。広くて持て余し気味の部屋だもの。
Yeah, there's significantly less members to, fill out the room, so hey, by all means.
それでは失礼します。
Not that I need to tell you, your best friend got murked too, huh? Ayumu strolled out of the room.
私も何かここに置いておこうかしら。
Your best friend didn't get murked. You don't get to use this place as storage room. I am as kind of a homie. You exist.
それは別に構わないと思うけど。
自分の部屋？
却下です。
Yukiko flopped onto her bed as soon as she got home. She then proceeded to hug her pillow. Though she knew she was wrinkling her new uniform, she didn't feel like moving at all. In the end, she'd failed to bring herself to take action. She hated taking leaps of faith, so she hadn't much as bothered bending her knees. Even though Yukiko knew this path would bring her nothing but misery and loneliness, she could do nothing to change course. She'd been given chances to talk, but had squandered all of them. Why? Even the girl who sat in front of her had tried striking up a conversation at the end of the school day. Her name had been Yukari Takasaka, if Yukiko's memory served her right. Did she ask because she was interested in me? Yukari had apparently witnessed how Yukiko had been spellbound by their art book. Yukiko liked looking at art. She liked imagining the sorts of stories each drawing told. She wished to know what kind of lives the people within them lived, what emotions had inspired their inclusion, and what they would go on to do afterward. Pondering those questions brought about a different kind of enjoyment than reading books. It seemed Yukari was in the school's art club. What kind of things does she paint? This was her first time imagining what a painting was like from what she knew of its artist, rather than the other way around, so she was having trouble grasping the concept. Judging from how Yukari looked, though, Yukiko reckoned she drew pictures with thin lines. But then, what of her choice of colors? Perhaps she employed a lot of light ones. She didn't seem like the kind of person who used primary colors, at least. And as for the subject of her art, perhaps landscapes, flowers, still life, bugs. Yukiko couldn't imagine what she would ever draw something like bugs. Probably, anyway. Oh, you mean her main subject matter? Yukiko got up. Guess like it changed. Her mother probably wouldn't be back for a little while longer, so getting started on the rice was the least she could do. After that, she'd read a book. Yukiko pulled a paperback out of her bag. She bought it at a bookstop near Musashisakai Station on her way home. The novel in question was a fairly recent one that Yukiko had been rather curious about. Oh god. And the title was The Shell of Sheol. Fuck. Okay. That's not a great sign. Snow danced from a sky laden with clouds. Though the war was over and the towns at the base of the mountain had been incinerated in air raids, this place had barely changed. Not its sights, nor its people. For this land was still firmly rooted in traditions that had been planted lifetimes before the war. A man carrying a wicker trunk emerged from a storehouse. He entered a building, guided by an empty-handed woman. The pair sat facing one another. The man set the old wicker trunk next to him. The woman held out her hand, demanding he turn it over. Hey, oh, what the fuck? Hey, what the fuck? I didn't press anything. Nah, hold up. The fuck was that? Nah, hey, hold up. What the fuck was that? Nah, hey, hold up. What the fuck was that? I didn't press anything. And all of a sudden, the just... What the fuck was that? One second. I'm gonna be right back. I saved. Yeah, so we're gonna go back. I'm gonna try to like. What the fuck was that? All of a sudden, the game just like hyper skipped, and I didn't press anything. And then yeah, it cuts back and like it's like, oh yeah, everything's working now. But it's like, I didn't press anything. Why'd you skip everything? I didn't press anything. Like I can skip all this shit now. Woohoo. Yep, art school. Okay, war was over. Sights, people. Wicker trunk. Uh-huh. Building, woman. They sat across from each other. Set the wicker trunk next to him. The woman held out her hand to man turn it over. However, the man simply shook his head and shouted. Okay, here we go. The flames in the paper lanterns flickered. Meanwhile, the woman smirked and held out her other hand. This time, the man reluctantly handed the trunk over. The woman opened it, then heaved a contented sigh when she saw what lay within. On the other hand, the man fiercely rose to his feet and grabbed the woman by her collar. The woman muttered something. Enraged, the man shoved her to the floor. An arm tumbled to the floor. The man straddled the floundering woman and wrapped his hands round her milky white throat. Ah. Okay. Anyway, it's March now. We're just gonna... Oh, wait, no. March 1956. So this is much earlier. That means this is well over a year earlier. Oh, Jesus. Kichiki Hospital. Tamiyuki Masaki trudged into a consultation room at the Kichiki Pathological Research Institute.
失礼します。
However, the room in question was empty. Not even the doctor was anywhere to be found. This is the right place, isn't it? Left with little else to do, Masaki plopped onto a sofa and waited in tedium for someone to show up. Suddenly, his eyes were drawn to a painting on the wall. It was a piece by Shinzo Mamiya. Oh, is it Girl in Shell? Masaki rose to his feet before he even knew what he was doing. Not often was it he got the chance to see such a famous artist's work up close. Though his eye wasn't sharp enough to distinguish it as a real McCoy or not, he couldn't imagine such a prestigious hospital would cheap out on a replica. It was a canvas decorated with bold strokes and red paint. And yet, even the tiniest details were perfect to a T.
絵画に興味がおありなんですか？
Masaki turned around when he heard that voice. Oh, hello, ma'am. You're cute. A nurse with tender features stood in the
え
doorway.
え。まあ、
私なんてよくわからなくて。有名な方の絵なんですか？
今上野の美術館で個展が開催されていますよ。
Okay, so this is happening during the event. This moment right here, anyway, is happening during the events of the first game. Okay, so it's been like roughly a... So if the first game took place roughly around March of 1956, I believe that's when everything was going down, right? It all happened during that exhibit, right? I think. So it's been like what? Like a year and a half since the events of the first game then? Where we are in the present day?
へえ、すごい方なんですね。
The nurse nodded, genuine amazement evident in her eyes.
先生は
あ、そうでした。今ちょっと来客中でして。
He's currently
もう
busy
少
with the
々
visitor.
お
I
待ちい
wonder
た
who
だ
it
けま
could
す
be.
か？
Is it my boy Reiji?
それは構いませんが。
私担当の上園真由と言います。
And with that, she took her leave. Masaki sank into the sofa once she'd left. Just then, he noticed a glass of water had been set on the table. Maya must have brought it. Masaki picked up the glass and quenched his thirst. He heaved a deep breath. Though this was his third time here, he still wasn't used to being in the hospital. It wasn't just because of the stench of disinfectant medicine, and the whole atmosphere overwhelming. Though that unstable mind of his was the entire reason he was here to begin with. Okay, so he was a patient of Makoto Rokshiki. This was the psych ward. Over a decade had come and gone since the war, but the pain from those days had yet to vacate his heart.
お待たせしました。
Just then, the doctor stepped into the
こん
room.
にちは、先生。
いや、申し訳ない。別の要件が立て込んでしまってね。
The older man apologized with a meek
い
smile.
え、別に構いませんよ。
最近はどうでしょうか。きちんと眠れていますか。
ダメですね。どうしても寝つけなくて。
Checkup had begun.
食事はきちんと取られていますか。
できる限り言われた通りの時間に取るようには。
それはいけませんね。規則正しい生活を送ることが改善の第一歩ですよ。
それは分かっています。
Husky scratched his head.
今回は睡眠導入剤を処方しますが、常用していると効き目が弱くなっていくので、
ええ、
そうなると強い薬を使わなくてはならなくなって、健康にも影響が現れるようになってしまいますから。
The doctor jotted something down on a medical certificate.
分かっています。